The O Cannabis Conference and Expo returns to Toronto June 1st through the 3rd, and there's still some good booth locations available. This exciting event is free for cannabis retailers and will feature Tommy Chong receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award at the O Cannabis Industry Awards. For more information about exhibiting or to register to attend, go to ocannabis.com. That's OCANNABIZ.com.
Today, we're going to take a look at a report from Headset about cannabis demographics and consumer behavior in 2020, considering that the cannabis industry is constantly evolving. There's also a lot of new brands and product types that are introduced every day. And on top of that, there's an entire new market entering the industry at an increasing rate. So Headset, they've got some real-time data products, and so they're going to answer some critical questions that might help you keep up with a fast-paced industry and grow with your business and stay ahead of the cannabis curve. Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your cannabis business podcast. Today we're going to take a look at the report from Headset, starting with cannabis sales growth by gender. So first, we're going to take a look at how gender impacts cannabis sales. Although males make up slightly more than 2/3 of the total recreational cannabis sales, sales to females grew more than 43% between 2019 and 2020, and market share to females also increased from 31% in 2019 to 32% in 2020. So when we look at the different age groups, a nice clear trend line emerges. Year over year growth decreases as we move through generations from the youngest to oldest. All age groups have positive year over year growth except for the oldest silent generation. Generation Z, their sales grew by a whopping 127%, with new customers in the age group aging into the market every day by turning 21, and obviously expect that to continue to grow. Gen Z is going to be becoming more important customer segment over time. The decreasing growth trend with an increasing age perhaps indicates that cannabis may be a more integral part of life for younger consumers, whereas it's more of a luxury or occasional purchase for older consumers. The pandemic also certainly played a role in the trend as well, since older consumers may have had more fearful about exposure to the virus and therefore were less inclined to make trips to the store. All right, and in the last year over year comparison, you can take a look at the demographic groups split by both age group and gender. Again, so you kind of see the line, the trend line between decreasing year over year growth as age increases. And with each generation, female consumers had a greater growth than male customers. I would make an assumption that CBD had a big role to play in that, considering that CBD has been touted as something that helps with anxiety and sleep and all these other cure-alls. It definitely got people more interested and kind of got rid of some of that stigma, probably allowing for a lot more sales. But even in pre-rolls, even before the pandemic was a thing, pre-roll, the number one consumers were white women 50 and older buying pre-rolls, at least here in Washington. So interesting statistic or demographic on that. All right, next up, looking at category wallet share. From 2019 to 2020, category wallet share for baby boomers and Gen Z. These two groups had very similar sales totals in 2020 at around $1 billion. So we've previously reported how consumer preferences has shifted due to the pandemic, but it's important to realize that those trends are for the entire consumer base. So for specific groups, we can see different types of consumers purchasing different types of products, and different types of customers are also trending to and away from different categories. So, for example, Generation Z customers consistently spend more on vape pens than baby boomers. Perhaps more surprising is that Gen Z increased their wallet share to vape pens in 2020, whereas baby boomers drastically decreased theirs. Edibles go the opposite way. Edibles have increased among baby boomers between 2019 and 2020 while decreasing among Gen Z consumers. Again, I'm going to kind of infer on some of that data and say that some of those, the older generation probably was staying at home, maybe not working, maybe it wasn't the physical aspect. They were taking tinctures and topicals when they were at work, and when they weren't, they were taking more edibles. Whereas life wasn't changing for some of the younger kids, they were still going to the same, essential business, paying them, minimum wage or whatever. That's what I'm assuming. But looking at Gen Z specifically, we can see year over year category trends are different between male and female customers, an increasingly important consumer group. In general, Gen Z females were more consistent in their year over year category preferences, while Gen Z males had some bigger shifts in purchasing. Gen Z females slightly increased their flower spend, while males in the group slightly decreased theirs. Both genders increased their wallet share from vape pens, but males had a larger jump from 24% in 2019 to almost 26% in 2020. Gen Z males also significantly increased their concentrate spend from about 11% in 2019 to 16% in 2020, while females slightly decreased their spend on concentrates. Both genders decreased their spend to pre-rolls, but the drop off for males was much more significant. It might indicate a substitution towards concentrates during the pandemic for young males. Both genders also increased their spend towards edibles, a trend that we saw market wide, but female Gen Z consumers maintained their much higher share to the category than males, which was 9.2% versus 5.5%. Now, taking a look at Gen Z females, which is the fastest growing demographic group in cannabis across 4 different recreational markets. So you can see just how different category preferences for the group when looking at Washington and Nevada, Colorado, and California. In California, for example, female Gen Z consumers in 2020 wallet share to vape pens was nearly double that of any other market at 32%. Similarly, in Colorado in 2020, female Gen Z customers were likely to spend twice as much money on edibles than a Washington customer in the same age group. So speaking of vape pens, it's critical not only to know where the growth is occurring in your business, but also who and what drives that growth. So we can see here directly from the demographic dashboard in the Insights Premium telling us that vape pen brands, the growth year over year was driven by the youngest or younger consumers, not the older ones. Gen Z females specifically had the highest year over year growth in sales to vape pens than any other demographic groups at 136%. Maybe going from pre-rolls to vape, maybe that was the switch. So when we dive into individual demographic groups, we can see more unique nuances in their purchasing behavior. Similarly, when we explore the differences between individual markets, we also see significant differences in consumer behavior. As the cannabis industry matures and more towards a national or even international marketplace, we can expect to see less of these differences between states. But for now, there's enough differences to make it critical for those market level data to steer your business decisions. For example, we can look at year over year growth trends. It's clear that Gen Z will continue to play an important role in growth for the cannabis industry. And we predict by 2020, Gen Z will become the 3rd largest age group in the data set since he started to surpass baby boomers as more age into that market this year, whereas Gen Z is likely to pass Gen X by the end of next year to become the 2nd largest group behind Millennials. Also seeing a growth number of female consumers emerge in 2020. By the end of 2021, expecting females to make up a greater than 1/3 of total cannabis sales. And finally, observing growth in vape pen categories. Overall market share for vape pens will continue to grow, driven largely by Gen Z's preference for the product type. Curious to see how the generation and gender impacts category level sales by market? You can find more answers at Headset or come back to the Talking Hedge. With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.
Hi, y'all. I'm Jo, host of Casually Baked, the podcast. If you're curious to explore the highly responsible side of cannabis, farming, and legalization, I'm here to help lighten the stigma and build your canna confidence. Download episodes now of Casually Baked, the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And journey with me through the evolving cannabis culture and discover how and why people like you are adding cannabis to their wellness toolkit. It's time to get casually baked.